Okay, now my talk, we're going to be a little bit different this time. Last time is on the Confederate guns that were found in the cave on Lookout Mountain. This time it's going to be about a Yankee gun. I'll start out. The Spencer rifle and Spencer carbine you all are familiar with. This is the one they always talk about that can be loaded on Sunday and shoot all week. Basically what it is, like the old gallery rifles that you used to shoot down at the fair. 7 rounds, 56 caliber rimfire, go down the butt. This tube is spring loaded, keeps pressure on the cartridges, goes down, twist, cock, fire. 7 shots in about 15 seconds. Compared to the old muzzle loaders that most of the soldiers are using, this is a machine gun. I'd always heard the story that the Spencer rifle, Mr. Spencer that invented it, was an 18-year-old, well, I think he's a little older than that, he's about 23 years old. He invented the rifle, set up his own factory, a fantastic machinist. He had this great idea, so he took it to the War Department, that'd be the Pentagon today, to try to sell the War Department, get over here and they can hear me, try to sell the War Department on his Spencer rifle and carbine. The War Department had seen so many different carbines and rifles, they didn't want to see any more. They wouldn't even talk to him, let alone let him show it to them. Well, as he's leaving, kind of dejectedly, kind of carrying it over his shoulder, walking out of the War Department, the doorman stopped him. Said, "What you got there, mister?" This is a carbine that I invented. It's a 7-shot repeater. The War Department, they wouldn't even talk to me. I said, "If you'll come back when I got off work, I want to introduce you to somebody." So it was 6 o'clock, every time the guy got off work, Mr. Spencer showed back up. Took him walking across a few lots there, right into the front house of the White House. Went in and introduced him to Mr. President Lincoln, carrying a Spencer carbine with him. Can you imagine that nowadays? No way. Well, President Lincoln was kind of fascinated with it. So they went out in the front yard of the White House. They found a shingle that had fallen off the roof, set up against a tree. Mr. Spencer loaded up 7 rounds, put 7 rounds through that shingle in about 15, 20 seconds. He reloaded it and gave it to President Lincoln. Took him a little longer, maybe 45 seconds to a minute. I think he hit it about 3 or 4 times. Well, Lincoln was fascinated with it, but still, the War Department was not interested. The War Department said, "That's a waste of ammunition." No, they're so darn conservative. Nobody needs a repeating rifle. All we want is the daggum, single shotters. That's all the soldier needs.
That's a Yankee for you.
Yep. Well, that's the way it went. Then we had a guy by the name of Colonel Wilder. We know him for Wilder's Lightning Brigade here at Chickamauga, for which the Wilder Tower is built after, and he's buried. He became one of Chattanooga's first post-war mayors, and he's buried out there in Forrest Hill Cemetery. Well, Wilder heard about and seen the Spencer rifle, and he's fascinated. Well, he worked primarily up in northern Kentucky, and he was called the Hatchet Brigade. They carried their carbine, their sword, a hatchet, and a revolver. Now, why the hatchet, we don't really know, but where the infantry has a French horn on top of their hat, the cavalry has the cross sabers. They made their own little hatchets they put on the top of their hat. They called the Hatchet Brigade. Well, they were captured and paroled. When they were paroled and they came back to active duty, they became Wilder's Lightning Brigade, and Colonel Wilder, he bought out of his own funds, actually I think he floated a loan at the bank, he bought about 1,200 Spencer carbines and rifles, $21 to $23 a piece. These were to be issued to his troopers, his mounted infantry. They were to pay him back at the rate $1 a month out of their $11 or $13 monthly pay. until they were paid for. Finally, about halfway through them being repaid, the federal government finally acquiesced, and they said, okay, we'll reimburse you, Mr. Wilder, Colonel Wilder. They reimbursed him everything that was due to him, and they reimbursed all the troopers their $1 a month that they had paid up to that time. So the rifles, all the carbines were paid for and became, federal government property. Well, as the war progressed, we got down here to Chattanooga. Well, about 1910, somebody, I do not know who, was hiking out around Chickamauga Park, somewhere around the Snodgrass Hill area. Guess what they find laying on the ground? The Spencer rifle. It was donated to the museum that used to be down in Lafayette, Georgia, that went under during the Depression. Everything at that time, the museum was dissolved, everything was put in storage somewhere, I'm not sure just where. And this Spencer rifle, all the rest of the goodies went to that museum, into storage. The family that owned the museum originally, little bit by little, they let a piece go here and there, it got sold to the public, but nothing major. Well, then Lawrence Christopher, about 1988, 89, he found out he's a big Civil War dealer from down in Dalton, Georgia. He kind of goes under the nickname Lawrence of Dalton, kind of like Lawrence of Arabia. He is one of these dealers. You talk to him, you kind of wonder about him. You see his writing, you wonder even more about him. He is a redneck, but he's dumb like a fox. I mean, this guy is brilliant. He just plays the part of the good old redneck. Well, Lawrence found out who it was that the family had all these items that had come out of that museum, and he bought the whole lock, stock, and barrel and started reselling. Well, he sold this Spencer rifle to a dealer in New Bern, North Carolina. This dealer was at one of the Civil War shows, and he had it laying on his table. And I saw this old Spencer. I knew. And he told me it came out of Chickamauga. I knew I had to have it. The price wasn't bad. I think I paid him $200 plus 5 or 6 copies of my Civil War Relics book. So I basically, for money I had in it, I had about $250 or $60 in it. The books, at the time were going for $29.95 retail. So I had this nice little rifle. I just knew I had one of the Spencers. The serial number, you can see it right back here on the back of the tang, 23,058. Well, that about killed it. All the experts I talked to, you've seen some of the Spencer rifles that have been on display at Chickamauga Park and during some of their commemorations. That was not issued, Mr. Spencer's. In no way that could be any of the Spencer rifles. All the ones that he had were serial number 4500 to 6500. This is 23,058. Well, you can guess my feathers kind of fell. But I still had a Civil War rifle that came off Chickamauga Park. And that's the way it stayed for quite a few years. And then about, I believe it was 2 years ago last February, Jim Ogden called me. He said, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but we're having a small collection being donated to Chickamauga Park. And we need an appraisal on it. He said, I cannot officially tell you this or ask you to do the appraisal, but if Mr. Charlie, if you're interested, you'll receive a call from Mr. Woods down in Texas, and he's going to ask you if you'd be interested in doing the appraisal. I said, Jim, I'll be glad to do it, especially if it's something going to come to Chickamauga Park. Well, about within a week, Mr. Woods called me. He said, I tried to call Jim. I called him 4, 5, 6 times. I left messages. I had this collection that's going to be donated to the park, and he wouldn't call me back. Well, Jim, the park. really the park does not collect, does not accept collections, because most people that want to donate their collection to the park, they got 400 or 500 bullets, maybe a cannonball, a few buttons. And the park doesn't want that kind of stuff. There's no authenticity to it. There's no, or I don't want to say no authenticity, but there's no paper trail that goes with it. That it came off, is tied in with Chickamauga. It's just, as far as they're concerned, just a bunch of relics. That's why I didn't call the guy back. Finally, he turned around and called the guy back. That's what he got me into. I said, oh, this is super. The guy whose collection was a Sergeant Charles H. Bothwell of Company A, 96th, 98th Illinois. I'm mad about keeping names straight in units, but so I went down. Mr. Wood said the collection is being shipped to Chickamauga right now. They'll have it out there in about a week and a half. Jim will probably call you to come down to photograph and do your appraisal on it. I said, fine. Well, Jim called me when it came in, and son of a gun in the collection is a rifle, a Spencer rifle. Serial number 23050. Only 8 different than what mine is. And this is documented, Company A, 98th Illinois, attached to Wilder. Evidently what it is, the 98th Illinois was attached at a later date than his original regiment or brigade, whichever it is, that was set up. And on the rifle, which kind of threw us for a loop, on the bottom of the tang, which is this area right back here, somebody has taken like a nail punch and a hammer and put in the initials AM and a little CO. He never finished. And this is Sergeant Bothwell's rifle. Uh-oh. Sergeant Bothwell's initials should be CB, Charles H. Bothwell, not AM. This guy sent us in a few circles for a while. Started doing some research, and son of a gun, Sergeant Bothwell, he joined the unit. I forgot what the date is, but from Cave City, I believe it's Cave City, Clay City, Illinois. On the same day, somebody else joined from Clay City, Aaron Miller, AM. What's Sergeant Bothwell doing with Aaron Miller's rifle? Start a little further into the record. Guess who was killed at Chickamauga? Aaron Miller. He was killed at Chickamauga. How come Sergeant Bothwell has Aaron Miller's rifle? Well, Sergeant Bothwell was wounded at the Battle of Chickamauga. A bullet came across his back. It's a fairly bad wound. In fact, I think he finally had a disability after the war because of it. My feeling is, getting a little bit of supposition, you notice on the right of the carbine, you got a lever to cock with. This lever is made out of heavy steel. The rifle, the lever's broken right across the base of the lever. That is not something you're going to break just by hand pressure. What's going to break? 3/8 of an inch by a half inch of solid steel. A bullet, a piece of shrapnel. I got a gut feeling, haven't been able to prove it yet, that I may have Sergeant Bothwell's rifle. His was damaged, badly damaged. He was wounded. He threw it down. His best buddy, who may have been close to him or next to him, just got shot and killed. Sergeant Bothwell picked up Aaron Miller's rifle. And that's the one he carried with him throughout the rest of the war. Okay, I'm going to start passing around a few photographs here. This first one is the Aaron Miller rifle that's supposedly, you can see the serial number, 23,050. The next photograph is the one I have, 23,058. I got a rifle, close up with the serial number, close up with the brake of the on the cocking lever, and for a long time, every time I'd take it down and set it in my display, every time I put it down, the stock was real wobbly in here. I was afraid something was going to just totally turn loose on me. Well, I got a friend of mine, Frank Warren. He's also in one of the other SCV posts. Is he in this one or a different one? He must be one of the other ones. Frank, I took over to Frank's house, and he very carefully worked to manage to pull the whole tube out. Up here where it screws into the frame, it was just all but totally broken loose. So we managed to get it out, silver soldered it, and this end, this piece that pushes up against the cartridges to keep the pressure on it, and that one was missing. Of course, you know soldiers are masters at field repairs. Something breaks, they're going to find some way to fix it. Here's a newspaper that's wadded up on the end of that spring to be the cartridge pusher. I mean, it's, as I say, the master of field repairs. And then here's you can actually read part of the newspaper. Well, this Sergeant Bothwell was, like so many of us, was a collector. He collected anything that had to do with Chickamauga. He was down here for some of the reunions. He kept all his items. They were in a nice little metal box when they were shipped to the park. He had, after the war, he went to Missouri. He became, I believe, a judge in Missouri. He had one son, Charles Bothwell Jr. This is the guy that was in Texas, who is now, he may be dead by now, and I'm not sure, but at the time he was almost on his deathbed. He was in a rest home. And his friend, one of his best friends, Joe Woods, who used to go out hunting with him all the time, he asked Joe, said, "I don't have any living relatives. Will you please take these items that belong to my grandfather and make sure they get to an honorable place where they can be displayed and taken care of?" So that's how Joe Woods got into it. Here is Charles H. Bothwell's wallet. Inscribed on it is his name, his unit, and everything. He kept it all. It's kept all the way from the war. He picked up items at different skirmishes. Here is a cartridge pouch for a revolver. Here is a cap box for the percussion caps that an infantryman would carry. A cavalryman, the Spencer rifle, the cartridge was a self-contained cartridge. It's a 56 caliber rimfire cartridge, so he didn't need a percussion cap. But these are ones that he actually picked up, probably off the battlefields. He was a collector. He kept all kinds of things. Here's his little box. Here's his eating plate. It actually has his initials on the back of it. Here's a little change purse that he had bullets that he picked up at Chickamauga. All these, he had notes on all these, as where they came from, what they were. Here's a piece of a Hotchkiss artillery shell, just a piece of shrapnel. Who knows, it may be the piece that he was wounded with. I doubt it, but it's a possibility. And a pocket watch that's been disassembled. He kept everything. Did I say he went to some of the reunions? Here's a couple pieces of wood, the note with it. This was picked up, chipped off of the Snodgrass house. one of the reunions, he chipped off a piece, and he took it home with him. Here, this acorn, the nice 14th Army Corps acorn regimental designation. It's about, well, I'll say it's almost 2 inches long. It's a little larger than most of them are. This star up here, the solid one, the little split ring on the back of it. For a long time, we thought it was a 11th Army Corps badge, but I've seen 2 or 3 that have actually been a very, very similar, almost the same construction. They've been identified actually as reunion items. They bought them at the reunions, and the split ring, they'd actually put it through a hole in their lapel of their coat, and put the split ring back in to keep it from coming out. The smaller one is actually stamped brass. Again, it's another star that he bought at a reunion. Here are some of his reunion medals. And here's the one piece that Joe Wood said, I almost stuck that in my pocket and kept it. A beautiful non-dug CSA belt buckle that Sergeant Bothwell had probably taken off of a dead Confederate soldier. And this little piece of, what we call a little war log with with an iron canister ball in it. It has a label on it. I cannot believe that he made the mistake, but he said mini ball in a branch taken off of a tree on Chickamauga Park, and it's an iron canister ball. Also, on one of the purses, he had 2 little change purses, were a bunch of photographs. Little tiny, we call gem types, little tiny tin types. Here is Sergeant Bothwell himself. Photograph of him. And I guess these are other members of the family. I think a brother and a sister. We're not sure exactly who they are. Here's his coffee cup, again with his initials on the bottom of it. A little rosewood ink well. It's actually rosewood body, had a glass ink bottle inside and a piece of wood put in from behind and probably glued. And here's his fork, knife, and spoon, and the bowl of the spoon are his initials, CHB. He kept everything. Chickamauga was extremely excited to get this. Another one of the items he had is a Bible. That he picked up on the streets in Selma, Alabama, I think 2 days after the Battle of Selma. And inscribed on a piece of paper inside of it is this fragile pencil note found in the Bible. It reads, Holden, Missouri. This book was picked up on the streets of Selma, Alabama, April 3rd, 1865, the day after the battle in which the writer took part. My regiment went in, W-I-N-T, went in with 161 men and officers, lost 39 killed and wounded, none missing. Federal Commander, James H. Wilson. Confederate Commander, General Nathan Bedford Forrest. Charles Bothwell, late Sergeant, Company A, 98th Illinois Volunteer Infantry, Wilder's Brigade. This note is written on the reverse side of a land plat map. Also in the Bible was a ticket that a Confederate soldier that had lost it, was a railroad ticket for the Selma Railroad from Selburne to Newbern, Alabama, and from Selma to Newbern on the Alabama-Mississippi Rivers Railroad. That must have belonged to the rebel who lost the Bible. But this is one of the most. It's a Confederate imprint. Is actually printed in Augusta, Georgia, in 1862. The whole collection, after I appraised it out, came out a little over $20,000. There's a lot of documents and paperwork in there also. I mean, to have a collection like this come through after all these years is extremely significant. Jim almost lost it. That he wouldn't call the person back. He thought it was probably a bunch of mini balls. But and since then they've had another small collection. Another Union soldier, his rifle and a few small accoutrements have also been donated to the park. Since then I've done a small appraisal on that collection also. If you got any questions, I'll try to answer them. Yes?
I'm sure you tried to do this. Were there any records where those rifles were issued and the numbers, serial numbers to the soldiers?
Occasionally, especially on carbines and rifles, your Civil War, your standard rifles, muskets did not carry your serial numbers, but most of your carbines did, and some of your, like your Spencers, your Henrys, all these did carry serial numbers. There are some records in existence as to who they were issued to. I am still trying to do some internet search, trying to run down a source that will include this 23,050, 23,058, and hopefully get the whole range that were issued to the 98th Illinois Company A. Whether it's in existence, I mean, somewhere it was written down, but whether it survived is another story. Hank Boyd had given me a couple of sources I have not yet followed through on, that hopefully these people have done a fantastic amount of research on serial number ranges and what issued where, and hopefully one of them will come through. So if that can be documented, then it's going to take all this supposition away. And I honestly feel that this rifle is very possibly the one that Sergeant Bothwell actually was holding when he got wounded. And if we can prove that it was actually issued to him, it will be in my will to go to Chickamauga Park to complete out that Bothwell collection.
Who was manufacturing the ammunition?
I should have it right off. I think Henry made a lot of the ammunition. I got it at home as far as the different manufacturers. Most of the Henry rounds, or excuse me, Spencer rounds, the back of the cartridge, you know, where normally you see a head stamp or something, it's just totally blank. There's nothing on there. I think there's a number of different manufacturers. Those that carry the little H on the back, and they're not very common, were made by Henry.
But there was other caliber rifles at the time, the same caliber 56 that were
yes, some of the carbines, I think two of the different carbines did use, they're single shot, but they also used the Spencer ammunition. Of course, you know, the 44 Henry, it was used by Henry, it was used by Wesson. It was used by about 2 or 3 different rifles also.
Are these displayed yet? I mean,
I have not been out to the park recently. I think Jim is running into, they're all, last time I was there, they were in drawers in the upstairs part of the museum, waiting for, I think, for him to get a display, either a display case empty that he can use for be a permanent part of the collection, but everything is in there. Maybe not the paperwork, documents and so forth, but all the artifacts themselves will be in the display and very carefully laid out, and you know, for the public. Just like my cave rifles that I gave my last presentation on. Jim already knows that they're in my will to go to Chickamauga Park, and I think he's waiting for me to die.
that's just like a Yankee.
Oh, I know it. Yeah, he is, isn't he? He is. He's been a good conversion, though. Yes.
What was the range of a carbine like that against a musket?
The range of a carbine, 56 caliber, it didn't carry as large I don't think it would be, you say musket, you're talking about a musket?
Yeah, rifle
Smoothbore
musket.
musket or a rifle?
Rifle musket.
Okay, your rifle musket has a range, a killing range of about 600 yards. I say the Spencer rifle would probably come in at about 450 to 500 yards, and the carbine probably at about 300 yards. Yes,
That, how much does that Spencer rifle weigh? And I was using, you know,
about 10 pounds.
oh, you're kidding me,
Yeah.
10 pounds? Well, you handling it look real light.
It's not all there either.
Well, there's just a
Well, yeah, I realize
little
that.
bit of stock missing, that's all it's missing, really.
That's good, yeah, you're about right, that's got a good balance, so
Yeah,
the whole
it does.
Wilders, they all had the rifles, or,
Yes, the Wilders primarily had rifles, Wilders troops probably had the rifle, they did have some carbines. I think it's probably like 90% rifles, maybe 10% carbines.
okay.
Because they were, and remember, they were mounted infantry. They were not cavalry as such. The cavalry would have been carbine because they usually shoot from the saddle. Mounted infantry, they hit a location, they dismount, go into battle, shoot what they need to, come back, remount, go hit someplace else on the battlefield as quick as they can. They're very, very mobile. Yes.
How they keep the horses from running off then, you say if they dismount? Well, I guess
They
there's
usually have some designated,
somebody
like,
there to hold them, huh?
yep, exactly. Just like we have a designated driver when you're out drinking. They have a designated horse holder.
Every fourth man was a
Every
horse
fourth, yeah.
holder.
Yeah,
3 went in the battle and you had 1 to help.
I believe I'd rather be a horse holder.
yes.
Say, I'll wait
I
on,
may be looking at this.
I'll wait on you guys while you go into battle.
Those two rifles that you got look a little different in length.
Well, the carbine,
What's the difference?
the short one is the carbine,
Okay.
and it's referred to as a saddle ring carbine. You see on all your carbines, you'll see this ring on the side of it. I remember as a kid, I always talking about the saddle ring Winchester, saddle ring carbines that the cowboys would always have. I never knew what a saddle ring meant. What it is, they had a heavy leather belt come across, kind of like a cartridge belt. It had a big sling, a big swivel on the bottom and a snap link. They'd snap that snap link into that ring. That way, if they're galloping into a charge and they drop their carbine, they're not going to lose it.
Now, is that a Spencer you're holding?
Yeah,
It's a Spencer carbine.
This is the Spencer carbine, where this is the rifle.
Spencer rifle, okay.
Yeah,
But they work on the same.
exactly
basic-
the same principle. Only difference is the length of the barrel. Now and as I say, if you drop that carbine, you got a hook, and you're on a horse galloping, I'll guarantee you're going to have a bruised leg. That thing banging against you, but at least you haven't lost it.
Is any history on that one right there?
This one, no. I wish I had a history on it. To me, a story that you can put with a weapon, it makes it 10 times as valuable. Just like my cave rifles, because of the story. I mean, 5 old rusty rifles are worth, what, $150, maybe $200 a piece. But the story goes with them.
Priceless.
Somebody gave me a $1,000 bill for each one of them. I tell them, put it, get out of here. It wouldn't touch it.
Well, will you check with your boss and see if we can come back at Christmas?
I will. I will check with her.
We thoroughly enjoyed that.
See, as I already told Scott, so far I want to have the Chattanooga Area Relic Historical Association Christmas party. I'm going to have the Choo Choo Relic Club, the Dixie Relic Club, very possibly the Chattanooga Civil War Roundtable. You all want to make 5. I mean, once you've had 2 parties and the house has gotten halfway dirty, why worry about it?
You guys really like that, don't you?
All I do is just, I haul out the garbage bag, hope they're spaced far enough that it'll all fit in one garbage can.
How many rifles was manufactured, do you know?
Rifles,
Or carbines, or, you know?
well, the two together, I think the top range is somewhere around 35, 38,000, I believe. I'm not gonna, don't hold me to that figure. And after the war in the 1870s, Winchester, see, after the war, he actually made a shotgun also, Spencer shotgun. But Spencer bought out, Winchester bought out Spencer, I believe in the 1870s. So the Spencer name became no more, and I think the manufacturer of the Spencer rifles and carbines totally quit. When Winchester bought out, I think there's some things in the patents that Winchester wanted that Spencer owned. And they bought him out, and I guess he had a happy retirement, I hope.
How long did they use that action?
Actually, it was invented in 1858, I believe. And that action was used, basically the same basic action all the way to the 1870s. They made what they call a stabler cutoff. It's up here in the front of the trigger guard, there's a little button you could push up, called the stabler cutoff, where you could actually load it and use it as a single shot weapon. Cock it, put the cartridge in, close up and fire, rather than using your full magazine tube. That is, that's an 1860, early 1865 development. It may probably developed a little earlier than that, but they didn't start issuing those till early 1865. And this is 56. They refer to it as 56 caliber. The saber cutoff, they went to 56.50. It's a slightly neck down cartridge.
Was that still basically a military issue?
Yes.
How did the Union rifles compare to the Confederates, except for the Spencer? I mean, I imagine they were better, probably. Weren't they, the Union rifles, I guess?
Well, that's a kind of a debatable. As far as those manufactured in the South, I would say the Union rifles were probably far superior to the Southern, because they had the fine manufacturing facilities all over the North. Rifle manufacturers in the South, most of them were small quantities with the exception of Richmond, the Richmond rifle, which came out of Richmond, Virginia, and also the Fayetteville, which came out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. Of course, the South very well armed themselves by the thousands of captured Yankee Springfields and imported British Enfields. So they had some very fine rifles to fight with. In fact, I've heard many comments that a lot of the Yankees preferred the British Enfield above their own Springfield rifles.
Plus,
They probably captured a lot of those Spencer rifles,
Well,
too.
yes, they probably did, but the thing was, they didn't have the source of ammunition in
They
the
didn't have
South.
the ammunition.
Not for a rimfire cartridge.
we were known for our marksmanship as well, weren't we?
Yes. Very much so.
Well, did the English come out with a repeater too?
Not to my knowledge till well after the Civil War. They were still pretty well working with the single shot rifles also.
You know, America's been known for taking other ideas and making them 10 times better.
Oh, yes. And now the Japanese and Chinese are doing it to us. I hate to admit it. Yes.
I always wondered why Custer was using the single shot 45 70s.
Because of the conservative War Department. And basically, the ammunition that he got, it was 45-70 rimfire ammunition, was actually overloaded. It was too hot for the action. And the big problem was the cartridges, when fired, were swelling in the breech. And Custer's men were having one heck of a fit getting those expended hulls out of the breech. And the Indians did have some Henrys, and they did have some Winchesters. Henry's a 14-shot repeater, not about how many shots the Winchester 66 had, but is somewhere around 12 or 14 shots that the Indians also had. So I mean, Custer, he really didn't have much of a chance.
The
Where
Indians
did
had a few
Indians get
Spencers
them?
too.
Capture them? Where did
No,
Indians get them?
from sutlers, people that were selling to them under the, must say, under the table.
Black market, right?
Yep,
Under the wagon.
exactly.
Okay,
The free market.
any more questions for Charlie?
I guess not. I enjoyed it.
Okay.